Hello boys and girls, welcome back. I am so excited to see you all again, whether it be face-to-face or virtually. Know that I am so excited to get to work on another art project with you all again. Now, the previous week we've been learning all about shapes. We've learned about three-dimensional shapes, organic shapes, inorganic shapes, and we've also been learning a lot about space and giving the illusion and depth. Last week we went over space and we learned that depth is the measurement of how far back into space an object goes. We've learned of how to create or give the illusion of depth by overlapping, by scale and proportion, placement, adding details to an artwork, also creating the illusion of depth by adding color and value. This week we're going to get to create an art project that applies all of those elements. So let's go ahead and get started. Today you will create a 3D Rubik's Cube. For this art project, you will need a white sheet of paper, scissors, a ruler. Now, to color a Rubik's Cube, you will get to choose either to use colored pencils, markers, oil pastels, or even crayons. Pencil and eraser, and a black marker. Alright, so let's first determine what the middle of our page is, and we are first going to measure the length of our paper, and we know that this paper measures 12 inches. So if I divide that by 2, it's going to give me 6 inches, and that is where my little dot is going to go, and that will determine where the middle line will be drawn. Now it's time to start drawing the bottom of our Rubik's Cube. And we are going to create about a 10 centimeter long angled line. Now I'm going to connect it using another angled line and also about 10 centimeters long. Notice that both lines are angled, and remember that is a very, very important step in order for this Rubik's Cube to look real. Now we are going to start working on the top of our Rubik's Cube. So we're going to bring those two angled lines with your ruler. You're going to slide it up. And it's very important not to go too far up because we don't want this Rubik's Cube to be too elongated. So we're going to bring that same angled line to the top. And you will follow the same process for your second top line. Now that we created both the top lines and bottom lines, you will end up with two obtuse angles. And it's time to connect them. Once you have closed up both walls, now it's time to move up to our top wall. We are going to connect those lines with our middle line that we created initially. And of course, they are both going to be angled lines. Now that we created our cube, it's time to go back and erase those lines that we don't need. So we will start off by erasing those lines in the corners as well as that line in the middle that is on top of our cube. Alright, so let's take a moment and look at a picture of a Rubik's Cube. And we know that Rubik's Cube have 3 columns and 3 rows. So we are going to create those 3 columns and 3 rows. First of all, we're going to guide ourselves with that middle line. And we are going to slide our ruler over. And it's very important to create those lines using that middle line that we initially did. So we're going to create that line to make our first column. And you will slide your ruler over and create a second column. Once you have created those 3 columns on those side walls, now you are going to bring it to our top wall. Now you're going to create the 3 columns by using that top angled line, and you are going to be using your ruler, of course, to draw those 3 angled lines on the top wall. Alright, so let's give it a try in creating those 3 top rows. So first of all, it's very important to guide yourselves with your angled lines, of course, and slide your ruler down to create the first row. Once you created your first line, then you will add another line, and that is going to give you our first 3 rows and as well as our columns for a top wall. Now we are going to follow the same process of bringing our columns down to our side wall. And of course, now it's time to add our rows for our side walls. Okay, so let's take a moment to look at the picture of our Rubik's Cube. And notice how the edges of each one of those little squares on each column are actually rounded. We are going to mimic the same thing for our own Rubik's Cube to make it look realistic. So the edges of each one of your little squares, you are going to simply round them by adding a curved line. Before curving those edges of our squares, let's first go ahead and outline all of our Rubik's Cube, and we'll continue curving those little edges at the end. Okay, so now we just completed the first part of our artwork. So let's continue with part 2. Part 2 of your artwork is to, of course, add color to your Rubik's Cube and add the highlights and all the shadows that are going to make this Rubik's Cube look realistic. So to start this process, of course, you're going to grab your choice of media. So you can grab crayons, oil pastels, color pencils, even markers if you like. I like the finish of the colored pencils, it's just a lot more neater. And you can do the same thing. And you are going to simply look at a picture of a Rubik's Cube if you have any, and simply color in each one of those little squares. Once you have finished the process of coloring your Rubik's Cube, now it's time to add the highlights to it. You're going to go back to the edges of your Rubik's Cube and lightly go over them using your white colored pencil. Okay, so now let's grab our black colored pencil and we are going to add our shadow to our Rubik's Cube. So we're going to bring lines out, creating a square shape, which is the shadow that is casted by our Rubik's Cube. Once you have created your square shape, then you will lightly go over that shape using your black colored pencil. Let's add a little bit more depth and dimension by darkening up our shadow that is casted right at the bottom of our Rubik's Cube. And you are going to create sort of a gradient type of effect. Okay, so let's blend our shadow. You can either use a Kleenex or you can also use a blender if you happen to just have a blender around. But if not, a Kleenex works just as well, and we're gonna blend in our shadow. Okay, so now you're gonna grab your ruler and you are going to create a straight line almost at the end of your square, right at the top. Now for our very last step, we are going to grab your scissors and you're going to cut that line, and you are going to go around, of course, our square to give it the illusion as if our Rubik's Cube is popping out of our paper. And there you have it, boys and girls. You just created an amazing optical illusion Rubik's Cube. I hope you all had fun as much as I did creating this amazing artwork. And of course, great job, artists. We'll see you next time.